You're listening to episode number 261, and today we're talking with my personal therapist on healing from sexual trauma and how to create a healthy sexual wellness practice or routine or lifestyle. Anyways, all the details inside today's podcast.
This is the Made for Living Well podcast, hosted by Alexa Sherm, the place to create a life well lived.
Welcome back to this podcast. My name's Alexa, and this is a place where I believe you were made for living well. It's not outside of you, but it's in you. And I know that is completely different from what other health outlets are talking about, but that's really my passion, to help show you that health is not some external pursuit, but it's healing the inner parts of you. And today on the show, we're going to work to do that as I have licensed therapists, my personal therapist, on the show to help talk about healing from sexual trauma and why this is such a big deal in really all of our lives. Not just in these big traumatic ways, but truly, we have all been victims of the over-sexualization of the human body. And today we're going to dive into that topic. Now, I do want to give you a forewarning that if you are triggered by sexual trauma or are working through a series of events that maybe have occurred in your life, this could be triggering to you. And I do just want to put that disclaimer out there because I do not want this to be a stumbling block or a hurdle in your own healing process. Now, if you find that this stimulates something inside of you that maybe you haven't dealt with, it could be a sign that it's time to get some help in this area and speak with your own therapist or counselor about dealing with some of this hidden trauma in our life. As we know, trauma can't just be masked inside of our body, no matter how much we try to suppress it, but it will always show its ugly face. And there are lots of ways to deal with it, whether through talk therapy or other therapy solutions. Now, like I mentioned, today on the show, we're going to dive into sexual trauma, and this is all a part of the Summer Sex Talk series, where we are diving into a new paradigm in the health and sexual wellness space. And it's so important because sexual health and sexuality is such a massive part of our overall lives and our health. At the root of so much of our health is this idea of the sexuality. So I hope that you can go back and listen to all the podcasts inside this series. And there are just a couple more after this that we'll be releasing to finish up this series. Now, like I mentioned today on the show, we have my own personal therapist on. Her name's Laura Palachuk. And honestly, I can't say enough good things about her. She is one of my favorite people, but she also is a skilled and trained therapist with a master's degree in marriage and family therapy, with a passion in helping families and people overcome their past trauma and communication barriers to create healthy patterns of relating. Laura is amazing at what she does, and I'm so thrilled to have her on to talk about this deep subject that affects so many of us. And again, I'm just so honored and thrilled to have her on so you can impart in some of the wisdom that she shares inside this episode. Now, before we have Laura on, I do want to remind you of one of our amazing summer podcast series sponsors, Athletic Greens. Now, I have been getting flooded with questions about Athletic Greens, like, are you sure? Does it really work? Can I take it when I'm nursing or when I'm pregnant? Now, if you have specific questions, please feel free to email me at alexa@thelivingwell.com or check out their amazing website that answers all of those questions. And if you can't find the answer that you're looking for, reach out to Athletic Greens. They have an amazing customer support that can help you answer any questions that you have. Now, the answer is I do love Athletic Greens. It has become a routine in my own life where I take it almost daily, not daily because sometimes I forget or life gets in the way, but almost daily as something I really truly look forward to energize my body, to nutrify it, to kind of just fill in the gaps, which is what supplements are supposed to be, this gap filler. Now, what I love most about Athletic Greens is its use of whole food nutrients, which means that they're deriving the majority of their nutrients inside of whole foods, which is going to help your body to absorb them and utilize them differently than a synthetic supplement that you might find on the store shelves. So like I mentioned, it has become a staple in my morning routine, sometimes afternoon routines, but overall, it has helped me feel more energized, help balance my body, boost my immune system, all the things that I'm looking for this time of the year, and honestly, any time of the year. Make sure you use Athletic Greens and use my link for 5 free travel packs of Athletic Greens, as well as a year supply of vitamin D. You can find all of that at thelivingwell.com, as well as more information on today's show notes. But for now, let's get back to today's show and welcome Laura. Laura, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you on. You're one of my favorite people. I'm not just saying that. You really are.
Thank you.
And that's saying a lot because you're also my therapist and counselor. So I haven't always liked you.
I don't always like you, right?
Yeah. You're one of my favorite people most of the time.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Well, today I brought you on to talk about a conversation that we're having with the Sex Talk this summer. And I think that there's so much to be said about how deeply sexuality means to us and how much it then can traumatize us. Mm-hmm. And I think before we even start this conversation, I feel like this conversation on maybe sexual trauma and even building confidence is not intended to trigger people, but it very well could. So I want to just address the fact that people could be triggered. How can we get into this conversation without feeling threatened by it?
Yeah, exactly. I think that the main thing to do is just to let people know that even though it feels really weird to talk about sex, it was meant to be a very natural thing. It was meant to be a very beautiful, good thing. And it's the trauma, it's the pain, it's the shame that actually makes us feel awkward talking about it. So I think just to say it's okay. Like we need to talk about this stuff. We need to like start unpacking some of the situations that inform how we feel about sex and our body image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's really important work. And before we got on the show, we were kind of talking about how deep sex is. It's more than just a physical act. It's this deep mind, emotional soul connection. And you kind of mentioned that's why the trauma is so great. Yeah. Can you explain more about why you think or what sexual trauma is doing and how we're influenced by that?
Well, I feel like at the very core of who we are is a created, intimate being. And like you said, intimacy includes sexuality, but there's a connection between body, spirit, soul that like this inner sense of well-being is connected to who we are as a sexual being. And that's where those very first wounds mess with who we are, who we think we are, like at the core level of our being. And I don't know, I feel like that's exactly the intention of the enemy, is to get us young, get us at the core of who we think we are and who God made us to be and calls it good. And then just from there on out, it's kind of like we just kind of self-destruct.
Yeah.
It just builds on itself. Shame builds on shame. And we just end up believing things about ourselves that don't line up with what God says is true about us. And then we also start to have strange relationships with other people because we don't have a good, strong sense of who we are.
Yeah. And I feel like
that's very complicated.
Yeah, it really is. And I think sometimes, and this might be untrue, but like sexual trauma almost always feels like trauma that was inflicted upon us.
Yeah.
But then becomes our pain that we carry.
Very, very, very quickly. So, as a child, if you think about it in terms of a child's brain and their development stage, a child's brain at that level does not have the ability to consider outside sources. So unless there is someone right there informing, and even some of this happens pre-verbal, right? So like that's not even a thing, but unless there's an interruption where someone comes and says, oh, hey, this is not okay. What's happening? What happened? This is not okay. And I just want you to know, I love you. You are loved. Like, this is not about who you are. Like, without that kind of affirmation or input, our mind, a young child's mind, is going to be very egocentric. It's going to be, this is about me. This is about me and what I've done, or like, it can't be about someone else. The child's brain doesn't have the ability to think that way. It's all about me.
So they put it on themselves, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And shame is the difference between something bad happened to me and I'm bad. Like, that's what shame is. It's that idea that I'm bad. And I think it's just because, I think it's at least partly because the young brain doesn't have the capacity to take in other considerations.
Right. At that point, it's survival.
Well, and the child is completely dependent on the caretakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the big people. So you can't, right, survival.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put it on someone else because that puts you in a more vulnerable position. So it has to be, you have to take it out. I don't know. Plus, in the brain, I've been reading a book called Soul Shame, I think. And I talk about just the neuron connections and what actually happens in the brain when trauma happens. And the thing that's so interesting is not even always sexual trauma or some abusive trauma, but like even just someone saying something in a judgmental way comes across to the little innocent, vulnerable, naive brain as, oh, I'm bad. I just disappointed. Like it's so, we're so vulnerable and we're so sensitive, and every little thing that comes our way, if it doesn't come with a sweet, joyful, loving connotation, it comes in as shame and it just builds on itself. So then imagine compounding that with sexual trauma or physical abuse or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. So when we look at trauma, I think sometimes when people think of trauma, they think of these big instances, right? Of, like I was sexually abused or molested, or, I had a horrific death in my family. But I think in my own healing too, I found it's not just one big thing. It's a lot of really little things. And trauma doesn't just come in big packages. It can be seeing images too soon, before your little brain was ready, or before someone explained that, or
exactly.
Yeah.
Some people talk about it in terms of big T, little t. I think all T is trauma. But let me give you an example. I had a client one time that was really struggling with her voice. She didn't have she was 25 years old probably, and just couldn't get to having a voice. And as we started unpacking things, it turned out that she was really just like a chatterbox, preschool, before school, went to school. And one of her teachers is just like, sit down and be quiet. You know what I mean? Like it was just like jarring to her little brain. And it was I'm not just that simple, right?
Yeah.
But that set her up for being sensitive to being too loud or too noisy or talking too much. And she just like interpreted that. She made that mean I'm not supposed to talk. I'm not so, and her little voice just got put in a box and shoved away. But we finally got it kind of freed up and stuff, but it was really very, very shocking and traumatic for her.
Yeah. I mean, it is I think we have to look at it in that way to say, like, there's a lot of little things, and those little things have an impact on our quote unquote confidence and who we are as a human. And ultimately that's going to affect our sexuality, our sexual wellness, and how we show up in the world and how we show up with other people. Right.
For sure.
Yeah.
And the way we feel about ourselves, what we've come to believe about ourselves and ourselves as we relate to God, as we relate to other people, and as we relate to ourselves.
Yeah. Which is really, to me, what sexual wellness is it's not just the act of sex, which a lot of people think it is, but it truly is our intimate connections with people, with ourselves, with God. And why this conversation is such a big deal is because it's really how we show up in the world.
I agree. Completely.
And how we live out of our passion. So when we're looking at this, I mean, I want to believe that there's probably not a single person who's not been impacted in some kind of way that's negatively influenced how they show up in the world. I don't know how you feel about that. Is there anyone who's been unscathed by the world?
Well, I think if you think in terms of just humanity itself, are we able to communicate 100% all the time from a position of love, joy, and affection? So if the answer is yes, then maybe. But as human beings, we just don't have the ability to do that. And so I think that by nature, we communicate in ways often that communicate disdain or contempt or disappointment. We don't necessarily mean to. But then if you factor it also, most parents are young. And a lot of parents have not done any unpacking of their stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. They come into the marriage or the parenting with a bunch of baggage that they've never really dealt with, and they're not that self-aware. And so that automatically gets conveyed in how they speak to their kids and treat their kids. I mean, so in that way, I would say we're all affected.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this is why we're saving for counseling and not college. Because we know we're messing up our kids. We were like, if we save for counseling, it's going to work itself out. Like they're going to figure out their life, right?
Yeah, and you can't do that too soon. I am trying to do that with my kids, like way too soon, get them into counseling so that they could avoid it. But, the truth is you're not ready to unpack till you're ready to unpack, and so many ways we have been influenced and we influence our kids. So we just got to have a lot of grace. Yeah. Lots of grace.
For ourselves too.
For ourselves and for others. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like we're kind of living in this porn age that we live in. Ugh. And, whether you look at it or not, I think everyone has been influenced by it, especially when we talk about sexual health and sexual wellness. Like, I mean, you're living this with counseling couples and other, individuals. Like, how do you see this impacting people and relationships?
It's really interesting that several years ago, I did not know how to bring it up. And I just started like bringing it up with people and like, so like, do you have any history of porn or any experience with porn, or what was your first sexual encounter? And people are just like, well, I mean, porn, of course, like it's such a natural, like it's just like a given, like
normalized thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, well, does it everybody? I mean, like, and so I started talking about it much more, just kind of openly. Like I just start talking about it because it's like, okay, if this is so common and so it is a very common part of a conversation I have. And as far as how it affects people, man, I think it's that intimacy. It's the objectification where in porn, someone is an object of pleasure for someone else. And so it starts to desensitize the brain. It starts to erode the capacity for intimacy. Mm-hmm. So let's say that we have a capacity for intimacy, and I think everybody does, right? Like even two people in a marriage, like one person might have a big capacity and one very restricted. I think of it in terms of like, how big is your pot? Like if you're going to pot a plant, you know what I mean? Like the capacity for intimacy is greatly diminished by the use of porn. Uh-huh. And I see it all the time, so that couples can be, they just have trouble like looking at each other in the eye, or they have trouble like connecting as far as like emotional connection. It's just such a barrier.
Mm-hmm. I kind of sometimes think about it as, because I get this a lot, like even when I want to research guests, and there's a lot of quote unquote sex therapists who would recommend pornography and the bedroom as a driver of intimacy. And in my head, I can't logically wrap my mind around that because of what I see sexual wellness as being so much more than just, again, getting aroused for a physical act, right? Mm-hmm. It's like that connection. And I kind of think about it like our friends on social media, right? Like we have this idea that we're connecting with someone online, but we're really not ever connecting.
Right.
And physically, there's a massive difference that's happening in our brains and our emotional connection of like, I think we're friends, but we're really not friends. Therefore, you're never really getting the benefit from it. And it almost causes more of this like disconnect with who you are as a human.
Yeah, I agree with you. I can't imagine how porn could be useful for anything other than diminishing human value. I don't know. I think our little brains are just too vulnerable for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Right. It creates a story. And I'm a big believer in the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, me too.
Are these stories, obviously porn is creating a new kind of story, whatever that might be. And there's a drive for pornography that's different than a human connection, right? It's in a way easier, maybe a disconnect. I'm not really sure. I haven't really figured it out yet, but there's a reason people do it.
I think it has something to do with convenience, whatever gets you where you want to go faster, and I guess that, or maybe you just have lost the inability to connect emotionally. And so that's what you need. Mm-hmm. And so if you're using that as a tool or a crutch, then you're not actually developing the emotional capacity. You're not longing for it and praying for it and fighting off against that which gets in the way of it.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's probably never going to be as satisfying.
I don't think it's made to be satisfying in that way.
Yeah.
I think we're made to be curious about each other and explore the person in front of us, be interested in the person in front of us and to be the cherished person, the apple of the eye. Well, if you're watching two other people, how interested are you in the person right in front of you other than just for a pleasure way?
Right. I mean, you're kind of missing the underlying reason sex was designed.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if we get too far away from the natural design, we have trouble recapturing it. And then we create a story that is about what I need more than what or what I desire more than what I need, or to respect the other person, for the other person to be seen.
And I feel like these are dangerous stories.
Yeah.
That were probably developed long before pornography started. Do you think most of the stories that we're living out of as adults and reacting to were created in childhood?
Absolutely. I've been doing this for, 12, 15 years. I've never not seen a connection to childhood when you get deeper into the story. And I think that, by the time we're 10, 5, 6, 7, 10, I think we've created a foundation for story already that then we just build on the rest of our life. I mean, the earliest things that we take in are already building a story.
Yeah. And that really is bringing in a lot of the confidence that's going to, again, show us how we relate to the world. Like, how do we then, like, okay, if we're saying this story started a long time ago and it's led us to act out of this, or it's led to kind of this pull in our relationships, which is exactly what Peyton and I have found, right? It's like we're almost both living in our younger selves and we're just pulling ourselves apart. Like, it's so selfish because kids are so selfish.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, we've done a lot of this work, but can you explain to someone who's listening to this, who's never encountered any kind of counseling or dealing with this younger child, like the inner child work? It seems really foreign. And I think when I first came to it, it was kind of like, what are you telling me? Like, how could I be acting out of my inner child? Like, can you just kind of explain this part of ourselves and why it's such a powerful voice in our life?
Let me try. I mean, here's the deal. When we are triggered, we are actually reliving something, right? We're connecting to something younger. So we might say like that's in the past and it's not a big thing. Well, right now it's in the present, right? Right now in this triggered state, it's in the present. And what's happened, I think, is that these wounds, these traumas, we kind of get like emotionally stuck at certain ages, right? And maybe multiple ages, but I really think that there's developmental stages that we walk through as we're growing up. And each stage kind of requires some development before the next stage, before we can do the requirements of the next stage. So if we get stuck emotionally at age 4, and this is the requirement is such and such, then moving on is tricky, right? And we might move on with a somewhat fair amount of success, but there's always a part of us that's underdeveloped, and if it's the stage where we are developing social skills, then that might be a place where we're kind of stuck. Or if it's a place where we're developing, logic and reason, there's a time in our life stage as a child where we're very abstract. You can't joke with the kid at this stage because they're going to take you super literally. And I don't know, maybe we could do some research and figure out what that age is, but it's like, if that's where your trauma occurred, you may really have trouble hearing more than just one statement that sounds so like matter of fact. So I think these things carry forward. And then when we're dealing with another person, we might be dealing with them like as a 5-year-old emotionally.
Right.
Sometimes I laugh and say, like, John and I are just like 2 5-year-olds and we're like adulting and married. And it's just like, oh, I don't know.
It's dysfunctional, right?
Yeah, it's very not healthy.
Yeah. I think what's confusing, or maybe what was always hard for me, is like whatever was triggered, like the pain of my past was protected.
Yes.
In some way, even though you're always acting out of it, it's never like this glaring sign that like this happened to me and this is why I'm reacting that way.
Right.
That trauma is buried. So you can't figure out why you're reacting the way that you are, but something triggered like something that might get close to that pain. And so your body just puts up all those barriers.
Well, I mean, until you start unpacking your story, until you start seeing the connections, and then you can start going, oh, when I do this, it's usually because I'm feeling powerless or helpless or trapped. Mm-hmm. And this is my go-to, what I do. But so what I usually say to people is like, I know this sounds really weird. And it is, but it feels like I'm talking to how old do you feel right now?
Yeah.
Emotionally, how old do you feel? Well, and almost always someone says, I teenager, 5, 6, 20. I mean, it's a different age, it's just like, and then I'm like, so let's just kind of sit with that and see what that age has to say, which I know sounds really crazy. But it usually doesn't take people long to shift and go, well, yeah, I do kind of feel that way. And yeah, it kind of does make sense that maybe I have some stuff somewhere in the past that this feels a lot like when I tried to help my dad and he told me to, I remember once trying to my dad we were probably 7 and 9. He expected us to hold up a piece of sheetrock above our head in the garage so that he could nail it in, and it slipped. Right? And it's just like, we were bad. Like, we did it wrong and we couldn't help him. And he was so mad. And there was no way to take it any other way at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that kind of logged in a certain way in my mind. It's just like, I can't, right. And you get paralyzed.
Right. And you created a story around it.
Right. Exactly.
What just keeps living out of that over and over, like the repeated, why people get stuck in repeated cycles.
Exactly.
And they're hard to get out of. Right. Yeah.
They are hard. And, I really think that the way this works, I don't know if this is clinical or biblical or anything, but it really feels like when we start doing this work and we do it, prayerfully, it feels like God, he knows where those unpacked places are and he wants to bring them out. He wants to draw them out of us. And it feels like as he does that, as he works in us gradually to unpack and unpack the story, in that process, we start to understand things from a more contextual way. Mm-hmm. And the story starts to dismantle. Mm-hmm. And as the story, like our story, my story, the one I wrote, the one that I signed my name to and vowed to, it starts to dismantle when I start to consider other outside things that might have been included in this story. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like there's a new soil for his word then to root in deeper. Mm-hmm. It's like a new story gets created that doesn't make me the problem or the victim or the whatever it is that I've got myself pegged as. Yeah.
And that, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes when I sit down on your couch and I'm like, come on, God, not again. Like, no more.
We've been here. We've done this.
I know, isn't it over yet? Okay. But when I first started healing, and I think before I started doing this work, I always just thought that I could escape it. Like that somehow, changing the story meant completely erasing the past.
Yep.
And I think a lot of people get there and get stuck in that idea that we can somehow just escape what's been done to us and completely forget it forever. Right.
Yeah.
But, and that makes healing incredibly impossible. One, because it's impossible to escape. It's not about changing what's been done to you. It's about changing the story.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think that we are so hard on ourselves. So I think that without curiosity and capacity for I don't know, like if people are willing to take a season, and it's not like we're going to go there and we're going to wallow forever. That's where we're going to stay stuck, right? But they'll be willing to take a season to let the story unfold and unpack. I think that with compassion and curiosity, but without that, we just kind of like have a way of, well, part of the story is, well, she's dumb, or my younger self, she's too broken, she's damaged beyond repair, she's whatever, and I've written her off in some way. And so with that kind of attitude and of feelings, the healing is almost impossible, right? Mm-hmm. But as soon as we start to kind of like unpack and understand these self-protective mechanisms, the way that we've written this so that we don't have to deal with her, mm-hmm. It starts to make space and compassion and curiosity for that to happen. It's really the craziest thing.
Right.
The strangest process.
It is the strangest process, but it really is impactful because, again, it's like when we get back to like sexual wellness, if you can't unpack this in yourself and almost be intimate in yourself, like you'll mm-hmm. never be that way with someone else. Like there'll always be a barrier, or you'll always be acting based on how you think you should be acting. Mm-hmm. And instead of just being like, true intimacy is like that wholeness, right? Like it's being confident in yourself enough to be relational with other people. And again, that comes with the confidence in who you are and who you were designed for.
Yeah.
But how do you help people achieve that confidence in themselves? Is it writing, changing the story? Is it doing this work? How do you?
It's all of that.
Yeah.
It's all of that. And I think the first step is when someone's willing to say, I've tried everything. I've tried everything to figure out this, there's all the self-help books in the world, all the, whatever it is that we try to do. We've got so many interesting coping mechanisms and self-protection techniques and stuff. But at some point in life, you just realize it's just not working. I can't. I have something that I want to get here, and I can't. And I've tried everything I know, and then it's like you get to a point where it's like, okay. I mean, I remember when I first started this healing process, I was just like, I don't want to go there. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go there. I'm terrified, but I have. I know I have to. And so I went in with for a while, I went in with, I'm going to force these memories. I'm going to make this happen. Well, that didn't work either.
Yeah.
That did not work. But eventually I gave up on that too and realized that, God was going to have to lead the process. Mm-hmm. He was going to have to show me what I couldn't see and take me places I didn't even know were there.
Yeah. So when you start working with someone who has some level of sexual trauma or trauma in general, like for someone listening who maybe doesn't have a therapist or a counselor, like what are a few things that you would tell them to start thinking about or doing, or do you have any tips?
Well, the one thing I would recommend, which I think is kind of hard to do, but I try to help people start like listening to the tape that's playing in their head. And if you can start to just jot down some of the things you hear, like, I'm so stupid, I'm so dumb, this is so, like, you start to get a sense of like, is this a positive, affirming tape, or is it negative, destructive, but you can start to hear like some conclusions, like, well, I'm just damaged beyond repair. Like, it's not fixable. Well, that's a story. That's a storyline. That's insightful, incredibly helpful, right? If that's what I'm telling myself, if that's what's going on in that inner tape, and people are like, I don't have a tape playing. Oh, yes, you do. There's a constant tape playing in everybody's mind as they interact with the world. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, 100%. Like, I think we're always telling ourselves stuff, and it's easy to block out that chatter.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's part of our defense. It's part of our coping. To block it out. But if you start tuning in, if you start actually listening and just start recording some of the things that you hear, it's pretty alarming. And it should reveal, like if it's positive and encouraging and affirming, great. You probably aren't even thinking about needing a counselor.
Yeah.
Or to unpack anything. But I think that typically we have a very self-destructive, very negative, very self-deprecating tape that's playing, and it reveals in that tape, there's a lot of interesting conclusions that we've made that get revealed.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we've made sense of things, it comes across in that narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like naming things,
Yeah.
I don't want to say makes it go away, but I feel like it makes sense of maybe what's not making sense.
It's a starting point. And I can tell you, one of the most powerful things that happens in any counseling session or any conversation with any two people is validation.
Yeah.
When someone says, man, that sucks, you know, it's like, oh, it does suck. Like it helps you to start seeing it in a different way. And it also like naming something also, it unlocks, it's the starting point. It's like, if I can say I was abused or I was violated or I was like, it gives us a starting place. And yeah, it's there's a whole lot to do with that, but you can't go anywhere until you've acknowledged kind of things that happen that have impacted you, that have fed into the way that you're still operating in this world and in relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's even like things like this last time when I met with you, I said something about being a victim. And I was like, I hate that I said that I was a victim because I hate that word. I hate what it means. Like I hate everything about it. And you said, well, maybe you should just let yourself feel like a victim for a minute. Like maybe that's justified. And I was kind of mad at you for saying that at first, because I'm like, I will not be a victim. Like, but
I am not a victim.
But that was also, I think, a protective mechanism that was preventing me from getting to that trauma. And like in my head, I had made it seem like a good thing because I'm really good at making things seem like this is the positive thing. This is the right thing for me to do because that's what self-help books tell me. And it almost sometimes those self-help books have let me build more barriers. Books, even when we talk about sexual education and sex talk of like, okay, this is what I think I need to do to be more intimate. And so you almost use that as your crutch to not actually do the work to understand, but why am I believing that I'm no good, that no one likes me, that, you know, my husband doesn't think I'm beautiful or whatever that story is, you know, like for me, it was like, I will not be a victim was preventing me from being okay to say like, you know, like I was a victim
at one time.
And in a way, owning that for that brief moment when we were there and doing this work, it has allowed me to say like, but that doesn't have to be my story.
Exactly.
You know, like for so long, it was like me telling myself I wasn't a victim was not changing my story.
No,
it was just causing this inner like this inner war of like me versus my younger self. And I think so many people are stuck there trying to do all of the right things.
Yeah.
But feeling like nothing is working.
Yeah.
And it's got to be that inner war. And it's like you said, naming things or saying underneath the surface, like you giving me permission or, you know, kind of encouraging me to own that for a minute was what I needed to actually, in a matter of not that long, work through. I mean, that whole process that we did was still mind-boggling. It took roughly, I don't know, probably an hour. I don't know. Probably not even.
Well, it opens a door. It opened a door to like just give yourself permission to be like, okay, what did happen? And like have some compassion on yourself as a victim. It's just like, oh, you know, before I started doing this, and this, I actually was terrified and hurt and vulnerable and like I don't know all the circumstances, and the truth is we don't have to relive everything that happened to us. That's not the purpose of it. It's not to re-traumatize. It's to like sort out. And God's so gracious and good. Like I don't think we have to like relive everything that's ever happened, but somehow we know enough. We get enough that we can pieces together. I love puzzles. I still love puzzles.
Yeah.
like the more puzzle pieces, people say, well, you don't want to upset them. You don't need to give them more information. Well, you know what? Sometimes more information is incredibly helpful. It unlocks something. It's like, oh my God, no wonder. Oh my God, no wonder. I remember at one time one of the most important things to me, and not everybody can get this, right? Because sometimes the people are dead or you can't reach them or whatever, but it was really important for my dad to say, yes, I put you in a vulnerable position. Like, our home was not a safe place because of the people I invited in, because of this and this. Yeah, it was not a good protective environment for young children.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, because up until that point, it's just being dismissed, it's being ignored, it's being denied. It's just like, no, it was a fine home. Everybody does that. Da 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 da. Well, that was not my experience.
Yeah, right.
And I think that sometimes we can't get that piece, and we have to manage without it. But that was key for me.
Yeah. And just because everyone does it doesn't mean it's the right thing.
Right.
I mean, that's a whole nother beast. And I think about that too, even like with porn, right? Like everyone's like, well, everyone's doing it, but is that the right thing? And is it right for you? Like, does it make you feel safe? Does it make you feel connected? I think it's fair to ask all of those questions to say,
I do too.
I mean, we have to, right?
I do too.
Ignoring the reality. I wanted to take a minute to tell you about the sponsors of the Summer's podcast series. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite companies, Athletic Greens, is sponsoring today's show in support of better health and sexual wellness. I did a little experiment with Athletic Greens because this isn't my first rodeo with greens powder. I wanted to know how was it actually influencing my health on a cellular level, and I have to say, the results were shocking. My little experiment included a pre- and post-analysis of micronutrient values after taking AG1 daily, or almost daily, for those 4 months, and the results showed it worked in powerful ways. I was able to come off nearly all of my other supplements by consuming 1 scoop of AG1 daily. Plus, I actually enjoy the taste. Dare I say even crave it? If you're wondering how it tastes, let me tell you, it's the best tasting greens I've ever experienced. I was fully prepared for the post-green shiver. You know, the one where you kind of have to force it down? But this is surprisingly delicious and refreshing. It has a slight tropical taste that is very mild. I actually look forward to it every single morning. The power is really in their quality. AG1 has 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. The special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energies recovery, focus, and aging, and even sexual wellness. It's really a full body support, which is what I love the most about them, and while I'll stand on the rooftops to tell you about it. I encourage you, try it out for a month and see what you think. As I mentioned, to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/made-for-living to get started boosting your health with 1 scoop a day. That's athleticgreens.com/made-for-living. I also wanted to mention one more thing before we get back to the show. I just launched and created, especially for the Sexual Wellness series, a program called the 5-Day Hormone Reset. It's really more than just 5 days, but it encompasses all the information you need to know about what your hormones actually are and how you can healthify them for men and for women. Inside this 5-day hormone reset, I laid out a clear and concise plan to help you create space for your body to heal and your hormones to thrive. Because here's what I know. Hormone health is directly tied to overall health of our body. If your body isn't healthy or safe, your reproductive system powers down, creating dysfunction in your sexual hormone release and causing all kinds of symptoms. But it's not that difficult to get back. If you give your body the space and nutrients it needs, it will do what it needs to do. It knows how to heal. We just need to give it the right environment to do so. And inside this 5-day reset, I give you the exact plan you need to healthify your body, to provide the space that it needs to heal and supply natural energy, opening up detox pathways without deprivation or starvation, or really any external medications or supplements. A program done with only real, wholesome, and delicious food designed to leave you well-fed. Plus, it comes with 3 30-minute educational videos to help you understand what your hormones are, which is different than what you've been taught. And also what you need to know about your hormones depending on if you're menstruating or menopausal or even a man. Yes, this one's for men as well. Find out more and grab the mini course at thelivingwell.com/hormone reset and use the code ASEXTALK for $25 off throughout this series. Okay, let's get back to the show. Okay, so I have a few more questions. I could talk to you forever. But when you work with couples, I mean, obviously intimacy is a big deal in a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you see is influencing that? And what encouragement do you have for couples to regain a sense of intimacy in their relationship?
Oh, that's a big one.
That is a big question.
Yeah, I think that so much of it is, we can look at our spouse, but we're not looking at our spouse. We're actually seeing a perpetrator or something dangerous, and it's really hard sometimes to like disconnect and go, no, this person is safe. This person's never hurt me. This person, like, I think that's part of what every person needs to do is it's a way of staying present. I think we have attitudes towards each other, like oftentimes I'll say like, what seeds of resentment are building, and where are you storing things that you haven't really talked about, but they're starting to fester, like I don't know, to give each other the benefit of the doubt, to think well of the other person. I mean, assuming that there's not physical abuse going on or violent, assuming all of that, because that's a whole nother different consultation. But I don't know if that's answering your question. I'm not sure exactly. Will you ask that again?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like, how do you rebuild intimacy when intimacy's been lost?
Oh, well, it takes time for sure. I mean, I've worked with several couples where there's betrayal, and I think betrayal comes in many forms, not just, someone having an affair, but I think pornography is a betrayal. There's lots of ways that trusts are broken down, and it has to be redeveloped, and it takes time, and it means that person needs to be where they say they're going to be many, many times, and they need to like stop doing what they were doing, and I think people need to do their own work, and then also be considerate of each other, and be curious about each other. That's probably the biggest thing, is that curiosity gets boxed up so early in our life, so many times. And if you're not curious about that, if you think and you stop asking, you stop being curious, stop asking questions, it's a recipe for you're not going to expand intimacy for sure.
Yeah.
But I think to be knowing that this is something you want, that you want to be more connected, that you want to be seen, that you're willing to let yourself be seen and see the other person and be curious, it will develop. It's slow, but it'll happen.
Yeah. And I feel like I like that you said that, because when people are falling in love, right, there's a huge curiosity to it. You're learning about someone else. It feels exciting. It's adventurous. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge thing that is lost in marriages, right? As life gets mundane. And
I think curiosity and creativity are two things that get boxed up even as children often. Those are the enjoy, and just carefreeness. Those are things that just kind of not just outgrow. We don't just outgrow them, which we do, but also sometimes they just get boxed up and locked up and put away. Like, that is not okay to be curious, and it's not okay to be creative. And, and those are things that make a marriage flourish. They're the things that keep it exciting and interesting and adventurous. And
yeah, which is interesting that you said that, because there is some research that shows that sexuality and sexual wellness or health is actually part of your creativity. It is your ability to connect in your creativity. And so when that's squashed, when you don't have the confidence in that area, kind of, I don't know, just getting through life, going through the motions.
Exactly. And, how many times do I hear people say, well, we're just roommates, we get along really well. We're just roommates, but I don't feel connected. We don't have anything in common. And, we're not having sex and, all these things. And it's like, how do we restore curiosity? Yeah. How do we restore that? And I don't believe that porn fits into the creative pool. I don't believe that.
Yeah. I don't either. I think there's so much distraction.
It's not that creative, actually.
No, it's not. It's
the only way they make it creative is add violence and, and that's not intimacy.
Yeah. So when you talk about not feeling safe with your partner, or, maybe looking at them as a perpetrator,
Mm-hmm.
is that really seeing them as not safe, or is that seeing or not being safe in yourself?
Yeah, no, it's definitely projection. It's something that I'm either projecting onto that person or something in myself but again, I'm projecting it onto them. Projection is such an interesting thing that we do.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm feeling shame about something and I can't handle it, I'm gonna put it on someone else to just share the burden of it, which is so not healthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's a very effective diffuser for
Mm-hmm.
us. It's a coping protective thing, but it's very destructive.
I mean, it's why the world is the way it is, right?
Right. Yeah.
How do you start feeling safe with yourself?
How do you start feeling safe with yourself? I think about this. I say it in terms of like a sense of inner well-being. And that's something that gets developed over time. I mean, most people are familiar on some level with attachment issues. And there's so many, let me just explain, first of all, what healthy, secure attachment is, because I think that will help us understand what we're needing to accomplish. And I think that is where, think of an infant that is cooing, and the mom coos back, and she's smiling and the mom smiles back. Each time that happens, there's like a connection that's made, a very secure, like that child is starting to learn already that I'm going to get my needs met. Right? I'm going to put out a plea for attention. I'm going to get it met. And it's going to happen frequently and consistently and positive, right? Which doesn't happen perfectly, which is, another kind of attachment. There's different kinds of attachment, but a secure attachment is that there's a consistent, positive interaction between that child and the caretaker over time. And as time goes on, the child doesn't need as much of that because they feel secure, right? And so then they can go explore, and they explore a little bit farther, and then they feel secure in that a little bit farther, and then they can go a little bit farther, and because there's this secure, like, I know I'm going to be loved, I know I'm going to be cared for, I know that my needs are going to be met. And so now as adults, like, how do we develop that? How do we develop a sense of well-being where inside I feel okay regardless of how others are doing? So one of your questions was, that we're only as healthy as our most unhealthy relationships. How truthful? I don't know. I think that that's the way the culture believes, and I think about that. I've got kids, and my kids are struggling. I'm struggling, but I work really hard at working to have an inner peace regardless of what's going on in their world, because I've become so connected and so dependent on their happiness for my happiness that I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it can't be healthy.
It's not. And so I think that, like, part of that is, call it what you will, prayer, meditation. There's a sense of talking to myself with truth, like, I'm actually okay. I'm concerned for this person, but there's nothing I can do right now. Like, there might be, right? And if there is, I'm going to do it. But in general, this is a bigger need than I can fill in. And I'm going to be praying for them, that they will, I'm going to meet the needs that I can, but I'm not going to overmeet. I'm not going to overmeet them. And I'm not going to over angst for them, because, the truth is, it's my own angst that has gotten me to healing, right? If someone's constantly helping me or fixing me or resolving things for me, I don't feel it myself. I don't feel the need. And if I don't feel an intrinsic motivation to heal, it's not going to happen.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's kind of a lot to say, but I do think that we can find it. I think that in our mates now, our spouses now, there's, if they are a safe person, we can actually start creating some new attachment bonds. Like, our brain is plastic. It can create new ways of interacting. So fires together, wires together, right? So if I've been married 22 years now, and there's been a lot of, like, safe connection points. Yeah. A lot, almost all are safe connection points. You know what I mean? And so it's like, that's building a sense of trust me. That's building a sense of security. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I know deep down that I'm safe and it's okay. And I can explore a little bit from this place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that happens in relationship, not that a single person can't create healthy attachments. You've got friends and you've got community people and stuff, but then there's also the personal work, me and the Lord, and it's me growing in my own faith and developing a sense of well-being that's not contingent on any other human being.
Right. And is that where you would say confidence is birthed out of? Your own?
I do.
Personal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we walk around with a lot of confidence facade.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have confidence. That's why so many of us are like, we go, oh, they've got it made. Or, oh, da, 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 da. That is just BS. Everyone is dealing with some kind of something and has some level of unpacking to do and woundedness. And and if we can just operate in the world with a little bit more grace and compassion, knowing that, if somebody's being a royal BI, they're probably really insecure or hurting or struggling in some way.
Yeah.
And that helps us shift our perspective or our interaction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think since I've started doing this work in myself and realizing my own triggers and trauma, you're more graceful for other people what they're going through. Maybe not my husband quite as much, but I was just going to say,
the husband tends to be the last one.
Because he should be perfect.
I know, right?
Okay. You kind of answered this, but I think, before I get into some of the questions people had asked me to ask you, I want to know, how do you live with your trauma without being influenced by it?
In the news story, maybe it can be categorized in a different way, where we were able to tell ourselves now, again, with the new storyline, that I have some wounds. So it's kind of the difference between I'm damaged beyond repair, which is my old storyline, and I'm wounded and in the process of healing. It's a very different storyline. It's the way that we rewrite it that helps us live in it. Like, oh yeah, I'm wounded. Like there's a lot of woundedness and I have the capacity and I'm not defined by it, right? Like my old storyline was I'm defined. This is who I am. Like I am broken and I am damaged and I can't connect with people and it's so limiting. It's so rigid. And now it's like, oh no, I'm wounded. I'm healing. I'm working to expand my ability to trust and intimacy and actually I am actually communicating in healthier ways in a lot of ways, not perfectly, right? But to the degree that I'm working on this stuff, I actually, and I can see this so much in one of my daughters. It's just like when she's doing her recovery work, I can talk to her. We can talk. We can connect because it's not all blame on me. You know, it's like she's owning her own stuff, and she's much more kind and considerate. And she can see, and she'll say, "Oh no, I wasn't trying to do that." And we still fall into old patterns a lot, because of our dynamic. But it's like we can stop and say, "Oh no, I'm not doing that. I know that's what you're used to seeing. But that's not what I'm doing. I actually am asking it from a place of curiosity and wonder, not judgment or criticism."
Yeah. That's so good. Okay. I have a few questions that people have wanted me to ask you. They have. So this is fine. One of them is, and I think a lot of people will relate to this, but she asked, my husband is addicted to porn. And every time we get intimate, I can't help but think of what I'm not compared to what I know he is seeing. How do I deal with this? How does, and I think really the question is, how is it not about me? Is it about me?
Yeah, boy, that's a really hard one because it hits us at the very most personal place, right? Of self-esteem. I think that part of it is the telling yourself like this is not about me. I wonder if there's a way. I don't actually know. I wonder if there's a way to help that person be present. Like, hey, but this is a really hard place for me because I see so much destruction and damage in sessions because the guy will say, I want you to wear big earrings, or I want you to like color your hair, or I want you to wear high heels, or I want you to pose a certain way, or I want you, and I'm just so disgusted by that. It's hard for me to be objective.
Well, it really is. It really is. And I have a really hard time here, but I can't help but think that's their own trauma too, right? Like,
it is.
At the deep level of their core, they have to be so insecure.
Yeah.
To be.
So
Yeah. To say
to
that.
be able to say, this really is not about me. Now, the question is, do you want to continue having sex with someone who is so disconnected? I mean, that's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how to advise on that. But you've got to tell yourself, this is not about me. They've got their own little story going on. And I don't even know what part I play in it, but it's, it's got to be some kind of self-care story that says this is not personal. And I'm gonna stay present in the best way that I can. And I'm gonna grieve the lack of intimacy later,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I mean, it's such a battle. And I mean, it's clearly a battle that over half of relationships are facing. I mean, it's a huge battle, but it's like your most vulnerable state to have compassion on what someone is truly doing to that vulnerable state and how to not create a story around that. Like that's got to be the most difficult part for the person who is on the other end of this, to not create a story that it's them, that it's their fault, that it's not, if they looked better or, if they could do X, Y, and Z, then they could capture their attention.
I'm not actually sure we should even continue engaging in those actions when it is like that. When you sense that that they're actually visualizing someone else or that they're asking you to do things, I actually think it might be more loving in the long run to say, I'm not going to interact in this way. I would love to be intimate with you when and if you can appreciate me in this. This is what I'm comfortable with, and this is where I'm willing to. I think that I'm not sure we should be continuing in those interactions.
Would you call it abuse?
I would. I would. It's a trust.
It feels unsafe. I mean,
it's not. And I don't even know if you're how that should be viewed, but I don't think it should be tolerated. And I think that when you stop interacting in that way, it's going to force that other person to deal with their stuff, and they're going to blame you and they're going to do all kinds of things, but they still need to deal with their stuff. And I think it's more honoring to you and to them in the long run to have that, in other words, kind of be called out, or at least a boundary put up.
Yeah. And this was really eye-opening to me in different situations, but to almost like, I think you once told me the most healing thing you can do, or the most loving thing you can do for someone else, is let them do their own healing and not try to just like mask it or pick up the pieces of that. And I think we're so like in our minds, we think that's the right thing to do, or, in the Christian space, the Christian thing to do and to do the right thing. But sometimes that's causing more damage to them, and it's prolonging what they're able to do and their healing. And it, like you said, it's not going to be fun or beautiful for a while, but it could be the most beautiful thing in the end.
It might be, and it might not, they might walk away, and then you've got to deal with that too. But I do think that we cover for people way too much, and that we play into the facade. And I think to the degree that we continue to participate in a facade is detrimental to ourselves, to them, to people that are in our world watching us. Like, for big, long-term overall healing, I think these things need to be identified. And I think we need to have strong boundaries with it.
This might be a theology question, and it might feel like a side point, but I feel like it hits home on this. Do you think in Christian theology that God wants us to be healthy before we help other people?
Absolutely. I think, okay, yes and no. I think it's going to be tricky to be fully healthy, right? And I think that God works in us in many, many ways, even in the process of getting healthy. So I don't think it's quite that black and white. I do think that he wants us to be working, becoming more like him, and healing and growing in many, many ways. And I think as we do that, there's a much different overflow that comes from us that impacts people in a very much different way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I think there is I didn't really want to talk about purity culture on here because we've mentioned it before, but I think in that purity culture of like the men need sex, women must give to men. And that theology of like, men can't help it. This is how they were created.
That's not theology.
No, that's not biblical at all. But it is a voice in the Christian space, right?
For sure. Which, yes.
You know, like, and when we talk about that, to say like, no, they equally need to own their own sin and issues, but women are just as sexual. I mean, when you talk about libido, maybe even more than men.
Yeah.
It's expressed in different ways.
Right.
And sometimes we don't have, we've created a story that's so against the female, you know, libido and sexuality. And it's kind of like, I feel like I look at that and think sometimes like, that can't be godly to think, well, I like in this case, like, well, he's addicted to porn, but I need to give to him because like, gosh, like I can't wrap my mind that.
Yeah. I do hate how good Christian biblical truth gets twisted and distorted. And I think that there's a way that I think ideally we give from an overflow with the assumption that our needs are met by God, and then we meet others' needs from the overflow. Like I think that we miss that assumption that our needs are met too. Our needs are important too. Like I think that we just hear that selfless sacrifice kind of thing, and it's just like, oh, we're supposed to like deny ourselves, and we are, but deny ourselves with the fact that our needs are met, and our other, like, I don't exactly know how to say it, but I just think we missed something there. Right. Like, okay, so it's going to cost me, but you're going to benefit. I don't think that's an equation that God is pleasing to the Lord. I think that an equation that works is like both people are honored, and the honoring of both people in any interaction pleases God. And so if I'm submitting to someone who's doing porn, it's working for him, but it's detrimental to mine, you know? And I don't think that that's ultimately what my husband wants. He just doesn't, you know, how do I best love my spouse is to get him help where he needs help.
Yeah. And not to play God in that picture, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes when in my own bad theology, like my act of giving or trying to fix other people was me trying to play God. And we've had to do a lot of work in that area. And that's where I'm like, okay, I think the thing God wants from me most is to heal myself, work on myself and let God be God. And to be there, like you said, confront other things without trying to fix them. And I think sometimes we think we can fix our marriage by just giving to our husband or our spouse, even if they're doing this, right? Like, I mean, I like what you're going with that of, helping them without compromise yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's just like with a kid who is being snarky or sarcastic or whatever, you can say, you know what, I really want to have a discussion with you, and I'm happy to do that when you are able to talk to me with respect and kindness, you know? So I'm going to walk away from this conversation, and I'm welcoming you to join you as soon as you're able to do that. Kind of like that, you know what I mean? Like, I want to be intimate with you. I want to be connected to you and close, but this is not, I'm not going to do it in this way where I feel compromised or unsafe or vulnerable. And so I'm going to disengage from this. I just want you to know that the door is open when you are able to see me as a human being and connect with me in a personal way.
Yeah. And we have to remember that men, young boys, are equally as traumatized sexually as women, maybe even at a faster rate than women or than young girls.
Especially boys who have had sexual abuse. And I don't know why. It's shameful for everybody, right? But it is in the healing process, it's particularly difficult for men to own their sexual abuse. It's just so much different shamefully, you know, or I don't know why, culturally, maybe because men don't talk about I don't know, but I do find that it's a real trick to get guys to go there. Yeah.
I mean, statistically, I think on average, they say young boys see sexual images 3 years before a young female will, which has got to be somewhere between the ages of 6 and 8, 9. I mean, alarming. But then I was having this conversation with Peyton the other day, and I was like, but also it's so normalized for the male species. Like, you know, you'll go into like a garage, into like a man cave, and it's like nudies on the wall, like poster, like, you know, we've grown up in cultures where young boys have seen their dads with stacks of Playboys or, almost in a way normalizing the fact that young boys should be looking at
right.
females in a provocative, sexualized way, which creates another story for them. Not to say that what any husband is like, or anyone looking at porn against the spouse's will is correct, but also helping them to create that space to recognize their own trauma. Like there's probably trauma underneath the surface of that too.
Absolutely. It's alarming, like you said, how, and so it's not even like we say normalize. I think another interesting word to use is desensitizing. Mm-hmm. Just like, these games with guns and shooting, it's no big deal. They're not real people. Okay. Well, are people dying? Yeah. Are you using a gun to shoot them? Yeah. Okay. It's real in your brain. Your brain doesn't know the difference between real and caricature. Mm-hmm. So like, we're desensitizing ourselves to intimacy, like it's based on acts. It's not an emotional connection. It's not, nobody, people don't, well, that's a whole nother story.
We need to have more conversations about this.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one was, what if I'm not attracted to my spouse?
Uh-huh.
How do you get that back? Can you get that back?
What do you think?
I think it goes back to that curiosity again. Like I loved when you said that curiosity and that creativity. And I think there's something, life can look so black and white when you're so mundane, when you're so closed off. And I've experienced that, like I've lost the color of life at moments in my life. And I mean,
I absolutely think you can get it back. I think it's a cultural thing to just be like, well, we're too different. We're too da-da-da-da. But I think that the story has closed it off. The story has made it like, I'm done here. I'm going to move on to something else. I think that the way that we think about our spouse makes a huge difference. So if you're looking at them with disdain and contempt and stuff, that's how you're going to see them and treat them. But if you start to look at them as like a creature created in the image of God, like someone who is like made with the purpose and has their own feelings and emotions and pain and wound. If you can start to see them with that kind of compassion and curiosity, it does revive something. It really does. And if you start to ask questions like things that you don't really know, or like try to find some like I don't know, I've never done this, you never done, let's go try this, or let's or even when you give up your preference to do something that they want to do, it actually grow something in you. Like if there's something about selfless giving that actually benefits us too. There's ways that this can be recapped and recaptured, and a new story can be written. It's not easy. It's not a quick fix. I think a lot of this is kind of, I hate to say this, but like a lifelong process.
Yeah, right.
But and it comes in layers. Healing comes in layers. We it wouldn't be good for us to go straight to the bottom and the root of everything, first time around. Like, I think it's a process, and I think God honors our timing, and I think he knows, not he doesn't honor our timing, but I think he's very patient with us, and we can trust his timing on how our healing process takes. I just don't want to give anybody the impression that it's kind of like 6 months and you're done kind of thing, Yeah.
I mean, it's so quick and easy. That would be the easy answer. Just be like, well, just move on. But there's no satisfaction in that, because when we live that chasing life, nothing will really ever satisfy that.
No, it's slow growth and development and becoming more and more who you truly are when you have a new story to live in. And it's it's very exciting. Think of it in terms of rigid versus flexible. The more rigid something is, the harder it is to manage, and it just has to be a certain way, and But the more flexible it is, like you can be with people easier, because truthfully, people are quirky.
Yeah.
We're all kind of quirky. And so the more flexibility you have, the more you can operate in the world without being so uptight and angsty.
Yeah. So good. Okay. Last one. I'm not married yet, but seriously dating, and I'm worried that I'm going to choose the wrong husband. Someone not compatible to me. How do I make sure he is the right one? I chuckle at this because I'm like, is there really soulmates? Like, is that really a thing? Like, I mean, someone's always going to hurt you, right?
I don't really believe in the soulmate thing. I love the idea of it. I really do.
Yeah, it's like a fantasy world, right?
Yeah. But I think that if you want to kind of be the person that you need to be to attract a person that's, I think, I tell my kids, I said, you know what, does the person have, like, are they self-aware? Are they willing to grow? What's their growing capacity, their willingness and self-awareness? If they, not that they're perfect or right there where you want to be, but do they have potential? Are they self-aware? Are they willing to like grow? Are they flexible to some degree? Like if those things are there, you got someone to work with, right? You know, and it's nice if there's chemistry. I still don't know how I still don't know how I feel about that. Like there's been a lot of in the history, prearranged marriages, and I think chemistry is nice and all that stuff. I don't know about all that, but I do think that you're going to be companions for a long time, and you really do want someone that you can connect with emotionally, have some fun with, and grow with.
Yeah. So good. Okay. Last question. What's some advice that you want to leave people with as we, as they go into battle with their trauma, as they work on intimacy and building confidence? Like, what's your lasting piece of advice that you would give?
Grace. Be compassionate with yourself. Have grace, and know that there's a bigger purpose for it. Like there's a reason to do this season. And our multiple seasons, like it's valuable. There's nothing really more important to help you connect different in the world, to show up different, to actually be a contributor to society. It's a really important thing, because apart from healing, we just walk around with brokenness, and we project, we blame, we do all kinds of really weird, icky things. And it's just hard to connect with people and be a positive influence when we're operating from that place.
Yeah. So good, Laura. This has been amazing. I love having you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing this. And I'm sure we're going to get lots of questions. So maybe later this summer, we can jump on a class and do more work in this area, because it is really vital to everything in life, including your health.
Absolutely. And there's some very, very different views on health and wholeness and healing and sexual stuff too. Very, very different views. So I'm sure that some of what I said is very jarring to a lot of people, but it's something to at least consider.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
There's another way of looking. Yeah. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
That podcast was deep, and we cover so much inside this class. I promise this is not the last time you're going to hear from Laura. In fact, this fall, we're going to dive into some more classes that talk all about healing, whether it's from sexual trauma or other issues you might be dealing with. It's time to unmask the trauma and to really deal with it so it no longer controls you. Now, in the meantime, don't forget to find out more about today's show over at thelivingwell.com. This is a lot to process, and one of those shows you might need to listen to more than once. Of course, I always promote talking to a trained therapist, and if you're in the area, you can reach out to Laura at TrueReflectionsChristianCounseling.com. That's TrueReflectionsChristianCounseling.com. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed today's show, that you learned something from it, and that you can start to take action in your everyday life. Don't forget to come back next week as we wrap up this series with just a couple more podcasts talking all about pleasure and body confidence. Two things that are so important in the overall scope of our life. Don't forget to subscribe to the show so you can make sure you are up to date as soon as the next episode drops. Just hit subscribe wherever you're listening, and also, if you're there, hit rate and review and leave a rating to let me know how much you're loving the show. It also helps other people who wouldn't otherwise find it, hear about it, and join in on these conversations that we have about health and changing the paradigm in health so you can actually live it out. Okay, until next time, do something to create health in your own life. I'll see you next week.